of this graduation day. Honorary Secretary Sri Kishan Badruka ji, my colleague Dr. Rajshekar Reddy sir, my fellow colleagues, my student friends, parents, invitees, and the press. First of all, let me congratulate all the proud recipients of the MBA degree. It is a rare that a fanboy gets an opportunity to introduce his admirer. I'm a fan of Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. So I would like to thank Dr. Rajshekar Reddy for giving me this fan an opportunity to introduce my admirer. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce an erudite scholar, an able administrator, a crusader for social reforms, a catalyst for change, and a perfect role model who is an inspiration for both young and old. Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is a physician by training and served as member of the Indian Administrative Service for 16 years. He was also the topper of the IAS exam. He had, you can clap loudly. He had a tremendously successful tenure and held many important positions in the government in the erstwhile combined state of Andhra Pradesh. During the course of his service, he acquired deep insights into the Indian governance process and the problems affecting the nation. There were many major accomplishments while he was in the government, but I'll just mention a few. As Joint Collector, he created a full and permanent employment for 8,000 youths from displaced families of the Visakhapatnam steel plant. As Collector of Prakasam district, he was instrumental in the creation of a record 2 lakh acres of irrigation, the largest such program with direct participation of people. He worked on strengthening the credit cooperative and making them independent of government control. His other initiatives under the policy were speedy justice through rural courts, economic reform and restructuring of AP, development of InfoCity in Hyderabad, the much acclaimed law for self-reliant cooperatives, to name a few. Convinced of the need for radical reforms to transform Indian governance process, Dr. Narayan left the civil services in 1996 and with like-minded colleagues founded the Foundation of Democratic Reforms and Lok Satta, a people's movement for governance and political reforms. Since then, Foundation for Democratic Reforms and Lok Satta have emerged as a leading civil society initiative for governance reforms. FDR and Lok Satta have played a crucial role in driving several reforms over the years and now focused on true federalism and effective and accountable local governments, rule of law, education, healthcare, and agriculture. Dr. Narayan served as a member of the National Advisory Council and Second Administrative Reforms and Vigilance Advisory Council. Since I'm an admirer and fan of him, I see all his YouTubes, and earlier he called himself as a practical optimist, and now he believes that he is a possibilist and believes that what India needs is a fundamental change in the rule of the game and not a periodic change of players. I'm sure, like me, there are many admirers of him in this audience, and it is my pleasure and honor to request him to deliver his address to the students. Thank you.
Those very warm and generous words of introduction. It's very difficult to live up to those beautiful words. First, let me congratulate all of you. Pardon my clumsiness, and I hope it's okay without this cap, right? First, let me congratulate all these bright, enthusiastic, optimistic, wide-eyed youngsters out to conquer the world. I'm particularly delighted to note that more than half of you are girls. Women, I should say that. For my age, everybody is a girl. Because if there is one significant improvement in the last 30, 40 years in India in the educational sphere, it's the rise of the women power. My mother is one of the most brilliant human beings I have ever encountered in life. But she could not finish school. Growing up in a village, she was prevented by her parents, by her father, who said, my girl cannot go to another village to finish school, because in her village, the school was only up to 8th grade in those days. From there, I think we have come a considerable distance as a country. Wherever I go in colleges and universities across the country, I find girls are doing spectacularly well. When I joined medicine, there used to be a 30% reservation for girls. And in our class, there were actually 30%. Today, I go to any medical school in the country, 60 to 65, in some cases 70% are girls. My own alma mater, when I went for a convocation some time ago, a few weeks ago, 70% were girls. And today, boys require reservation. And not only are they getting into these institutions in large numbers, but they're doing extremely well because we're raising our boy children very badly. Pardon all the young boys here. In general, boys are raised badly, whereas girls are raised with a sense of responsibility, discipline, an ethic of hard work, and an approach of common sense. And I'm delighted to note that even in management institutions are doing so well. Congratulations. I must especially congratulate the management of Badruka College and the faculty and the staff. Just now, they were telling me that 79 years ago, this college was affiliated to Usman University, Badruka College. So 73 years ago, immediately after independence, a few years after independence. To have the vision to provide education of quality as a non-profit organization and to persevere in the face of monumental constraints imposed by a very unthinking and oftentimes arbitrary government. And that's the truth in this country. It takes a lot of courage and perseverance. I applaud the management and the faculty for the outstanding work they have done and are doing. I hope that things get better in future because after many, many mistakes committed, they are now getting a little better, not much better, but a little better. The national education policy today is a more sensible one, a more pragmatic one, if you allow it to actually work. Because in a large country with 22 languages, 29 states, and so many union territories, and so much of diversity, it's very difficult to make a sound policy actually become the norm across the country. But at long last, at least we have some sense of direction. One thing that I would like to emphasize is you all come from families where the ethic of hard work, discipline, excelling, doing well, they're all internalized. Your parents have sacrificed enormously. That's one thing great about this country. Hindu, Muslim, North, South. upper caste, lower caste, rural, urban, rich, poor, there's one thing common binding all of us. All our parents live and die for their children. They're willing to sacrifice anything to any extent. And I must especially congratulate your parents for giving you this opportunity to be paying the But there is also a problem. And that is because there's so much of fear and uncertainty. There's so much of insecurity, everywhere, including me. We all think that the worst possibilities that could happen to our children. We are terrified. We become risk averse. We want a standard group. We want marks, ranks, in soulless examinations. So the first thing I would like to appeal to all of you and to every young person in the country is, when parents love you and they want the best for you, they may not always know what is best for you. Wanting the best for you may not be equal to knowing what is best for you. While we have to succeed, because we define success in education in a terrible way in this country, and we measure it very badly, success in examinations in this country doesn't mean much at all. I'm not saying you should flunk, but that's not at all an important barometer. You all applauded when somebody, when the professor said, I topped the IAS. It makes no difference. It's irrelevant. What grades you get, what marks you get, what rank you get, is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what is the accomplishment, what is the impact you created on human lives around you. So don't be too seduced by the ranks and the marks and so on and so forth. If you did well in examinations, good. But don't think that is a passport to your future automatically. No, not at all. That best gives you an opportunity. If you didn't do too well, all power to your elbow. It makes no difference. Oftentimes those who don't do too well in examinations in school, they actually do very well in life. So don't be obsessed with the Indian obsession, namely marks and ranks. That's undoing a lot of good in our society. In terms of marks and ranks, we are at the top globally. But if actually to go to the content of education, the outcomes of education from school to college level, we are among the worst in the world. I want a reality check. Not because we are not bright. Our kids are incredibly bright. As we discussed before, our parents sacrifice a great deal. But because we haven't understood what is really education, what is the purpose of education, what are the outcomes that we seek at school or college level, we bungle it. And therefore 80% of the gene power of our country is wasted. You cannot build a nation or promote growth with only 20% having the capacity to make a difference. So what I'm saying is not casual or perfunctory. There is a serious challenge. And as managers, you'll find increasingly, even when you create jobs, you don't really have ready-made human resources to take over those jobs and do a good job. In a country where there's phenomenal unemployment and underemployment, it's a very paradoxical situation. You know, there's a poem by Coleridge, Ancient Mariner. It goes something like this, a part of it. Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. All around you there's an ocean. You cannot see the land. But if you are thirsty, want to quench your thirst, you cannot drink even a glass of water there. Not a drop to drink. We have so much of unemployment in this country. If you actually want to employ somebody with skills, you find very few with skills who are employed. And that's a tragedy. So let's not be confused about the purpose of education and the outcomes we are seeking. And let's not make the means perfect at the cost of the ends. As Einstein said, 20th century is characterized by perfection of means and confusion of ends. At the end of the day, all of you, your goal is, as managers in particular, but as educated citizens in general, is to be able to create goods and services of quality that impact on the human life. It may be being a good teacher, being a good manager, good writer, thinker, player, artist, dancer, or a manager, physician, or a structural engineer, or a lawyer, whatever be it. The goods and services that make our life better and wholesome, enhance our freedom. That is the purpose of all this enhancement of knowledge. Society invests so much in education. In modern societies, that is one of the central tenets of governments, that every child must get quality education to fulfill her true potential, that the circumstances of birth must not determine the future of a child. That should be the minimum goal in a society. But you fulfill the potential, you allow people to grow depending on the natural talents that nature has given, depending on their aptitude and hard work, for a purpose. And that purpose is that our collective life becomes richer, better, more free. If that purpose is not served, what is this education about? Why should taxpayers or your parents fund education? So never lose sight of the ends in any society. In our country, unfortunately, we have lost sight of the ends. I don't want to go into detail, but I'm tempted to talk of only one thing at least. In a global survey of school education at the age of 15, OECD countries survey among themselves to understand what's happening in schools and to see who is doing where and who are doing better and how to imitate others, adapt the best practices. There's a survey called PISA survey, Program for International Students Assessment. In one survey, they kept on expanding that survey to other countries. So India was included in one survey by our own request. Out of 74 countries surveyed, they survey the outcomes at the age of 15. Out of 74 countries and entities surveyed, you know what India's rank was? Can anybody guess? Make a guess. Out of 74 countries, where would we stand in educational outcomes? 50. Anybody else? Make a guess. 20. Somebody else? Very pessimistic. 74. You know what? He was not too far wrong. We ranked 73rd out of 74 nations. There was a country called Kyrgyzstan, luckily in that list. So they took the last position. Not because they are incapable. The demands have been very strong for education in the country. The kids work very hard, they're bright. Parents sacrifice a great deal. Government spends a lot of money. Non-profit organizations like this, they invest a lot of energy, resources, time to improve education. Society values it the moment you graduate or get into a job or get into IIT or IIM or IAS or something else. See the adulation, the publicity in this country. Society values education. We have all the ingredients in place, except the key ingredient that matters. We haven't understood what true education is. We didn't understand how to measure it. The net result is a disaster in the country. 50% of kids in Telangana, rural Telangana, between the ages of 14 and 18, 50% cannot look at a watch and read time. Today. Only 50% can actually tell you the hour and the minute. 75, 80 are able to say roughly the hour, not beyond that. In the 21st century, how can they be productive members of a society, of an economy? And if the foundations are so weak, you can understand how the structure of the world is. You don't have to go far. You may say, no, that's school, but colleges are better. No, trust me. For no fault of the kids, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we need to do. But well, that's the reason why I talked about ignoring the marks and ranks, because everywhere in India, 90% marks, 95% pass, 99%, 98% cut off. Delhi colleges are below the admission, 95% of the kids, the cut-off mark for admission, 98%. For 95% of the kids, 98% is the cutoff mark. What is this percentage? I don't understand. So don't be deluded by marks and ranks. Focus on real education, and education is continuous for life. What you know now is, you learn how to learn, no more, no less. So do we have the capacity to continuously learn from experience, from others' experience, and apply those principles and knowledge and critical thinking to make the world better, to make your work more productive? That is real education. And we have some good news for your generation. You probably are the most fortunate generation in human history. Because the world is changing dramatically. Even 25, 30 years ago, around the time of your birth or before you were born, the conditions then and today, there is no comparison at all. That was the time when we had no internet. We had no Wi-Fi. We had no Wikipedia or Google or 100 other things. And of course, there was no Netflix. There was no telephone. There was no telephone. This was unheard of 30, 35 years ago in this country. Electricity, if you had a function like this, to expect the electricity to be there during the course of the function was preposterous. It was simply not possible. There would have been probably 10 outages in the 1 hour, 2 hours, particularly in summer like this. Even in the past 25 years, even in one of the poor countries on earth, things have improved immeasurably. World over, something more dramatic is happening. You all know. The dramatic transition from the fossil fuel-based energy to the renewable energy, which was once a dream, but today is an achievable dream. And right now, this year, marks a watershed. For the first time in industrial era, after industrial revolution, the production of power from fossil fuels is actually declining in the year 2023. This is a watershed year. So far, every year, power generated by the fossil fuels, primarily coal but also gas, etc., has been on the rise. For the first time this year, is coming down. It's a watershed year, you may not realize it. In another 20, 25 years' time, much of the world will not know fossil fuels. It will be entirely renewable. Because technologies and economies of scale have become so dramatic that what was merely a pipe dream is not only affordable now, but it's a necessity. That's the only way to move forward. Artificial intelligence, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, machine learning, genomics, nanotechnologies. They're changing the world in a way that we cannot even imagine. We only have some glimpses of that. Spectacular things are happening. And much of this change is a change for the better, because not all change is good. But these are changes for the better, unquestionable. So the world you're going to inherit is infinitely better than the world that your earlier generations inherited. And it's only going to get better. There is no problem today on planet Earth that cannot be addressed with the current technology and available resources if only we apply those principles and technologies and resources in an appropriate manner. That's what the skill of management should be, in public domain or private sector. If you're not able to embrace these technologies and resources and make this transition smooth and effective to benefit all humanity, then that education really is not of very great value. There's an immense possibility, unheard of. But there's also a great challenge. Because earlier, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you knew exactly what you studied to do, what kind of a job. Today we have no clue what kind of jobs you're going to do in the next 25, 30 years. Many analysts say 70% of the jobs that you're going to do 25 years later have not yet been created. We only have some sense, some glimpse. What it means is that the kind of skills required to meet the future needs in a dramatically changing world, they have not yet been understood. So What you have learned here is an opportunity to upgrade the skills continuously to meet the future needs, to be relevant in the future, which is going to be spectacular. Never lose sight of that. If you think what you are taught by Professor Rajsekhar Reddy and his team is all that matters, we are completely wrong. It was always untrue, but now, at this juncture in human history, it's particularly wrong. And in India too, we have an immense opportunity. We bungled very badly in the last 50, 60 years. Almost every other day when I look at the trajectory that we've taken, and the path we have not chosen, I feel so sad at the lost opportunities. But, regretting the past is no good. Learn the lessons, move on, and make a difference now. For long, rigorous control of human activity, absence of economic freedom, and therefore absence of competition and choice, have done immense damage to our society. Out of compulsion rather than conviction, we began to change some 30 plus years ago. We haven't changed it fully. Even though there are many challenges, because our default option as a country, our DNA is one of regulation, one of control, not one of freedom and choice. But we are getting better. Right now, for instance, we're poised for a reasonably high growth rate, maybe 7-8% over the next 25-30 years, unless we do very badly, unless we bungle spectacular. For a variety of reasons, partly because of what we've done in the past 20-30 years, partly because the global scenario is changing quite considerably and therefore giving us an opportunity. There is a chance. But never forget, all of you are students of mathematics as part of management, now or before. Never forget that there's an enormous difference between let's say 5% growth rate and 8% growth rate. Let's take two numbers, 7% and 8%. Over a period of over 10 years, the difference between 8% growth rate and 7% growth rate for the country would be of the order of $600 billion per year. That is more than 50 lakh crores per year. It appears not 8%, 7%, what's the difference? Imagine what difference would be 8% versus 5%. Growth is incredibly important. We need to do everything possible to enhance growth because growth gives more money into the people's pockets. That's how incomes rise. Growth gives jobs. Growth gives opportunities. Growth engenders optimism. Growth gives revenue to the governments. An additional 50 lakh crores of GSDP will mean an initial 10 lakh crores of incomes to the governments. And that can be put into poor people's pockets and can be put into better education, better healthcare, better infrastructure. So growth is the greatest welfare measure. Never doubt that. But while there is a growth impulse right now at long last, there is also a potential danger. I'll conclude with this. There's the greatest danger that has a potential impact on future growth in the country is the government's finances. What the governments are doing with your money. Because government has no money of its own, it's your money. Your tax money or the money borrowed on your behalf so that you can repay it tomorrow. Your money. Take an example of our state where we are. I could take any state, but because we are here, I thought I would mention this. In 2014, when the state was formed, we had the largest surplus in government revenues in the country. Because we have a very big city, a vibrant, dynamic city, in a relatively small state. It has an advantage. Today, almost every other day, the government borrows through, what do you call, with RBI, overdrafts, to sustain day-to-day expenditure. Profligacy. Reckless deployment of resources. We'll still be okay because everybody is still there. We're still a small state with a very big city, which accounts for about 40% of the population and 80% of the economy. But we haven't done that. Many states are doing even worse. There are two dangers in public expenditure. One is the notion that short-term individual welfare measures or the solution to India's problems. Of course, we have to help people in distress. If somebody is hungry, we must feed them. There's no question about it. If somebody is in desperate poverty, we must ease the pain to the extent possible. But that is not governance. That is not the way to eliminate poverty. At best, you can ameliorate short-term pain, but you have ensured perpetuation of poverty. 40 years ago, the government and the chief minister introduced 2 rupees rice program in the then Andhra Pradesh. At that time, the market price of rice was about 3 rupees 50 paisa or 4 rupees. So there was a 50% or 40% subsidy. At that time, probably about 40% or 50% of the people got the benefit. Today, we have to give free rice. When the market price is 35 rupees or so, a 35 rupees per kilo subsidy after 40 years, by now it will eliminate the poverty, right? And we are giving it to 80% of the population, at the very least. We don't have to go further. To prove that short-term welfare, however desirable and necessary in certain equations is, it is not going to end poverty. It's going to perpetuate poverty. Temporarily give some relief. Yes, some relief is required temporarily. But if that's all we do, and if we don't do what it takes to actually promote growth, employment, incomes, better lives and livelihoods, poverty will continue. Right now, 2 things: the short-term individual welfare measures. And you look at any newspaper advertisement, has any government said, I'm investing in the future, I'm promoting investment and jobs, I'm promoting growth? Instead, what do they say in their speeches and their publicity advertisements? I have given this, I have given this, I'm giving this, I'm giving this to so many people, as if people are beggars and he is the benefactor. Actually, we are the taxpayers, we are feeding him, we are sustaining them, and they pretend as if they are benefiting us, and we should be grateful. What a strange thing in a democracy. The roles are completely reversed. And that's all not the story, because that at least that can be addressed, if not today, tomorrow, because after all, when the bulk of the people are getting something from our money, we should not begrudge that. And second, we can always withdraw if it becomes too difficult, because there's no long-term legal commitment. Policies can change, governments can change. An even more dangerous thing is happening. Let me conclude with this. You know, India is unique in the world in having a system called the old pension system, OPS it is called. World over, how are pensions given? Everybody gets pension. If you are a manager in a company, you also are entitled to pension. A doctor, a nurse, a teacher, private sector, public sector, a sweeper, a household worker, domestic help, a person who sells vegetables in the push cart, the taxi driver, the auto driver, everybody in those countries gets pension. Near 100% of the population, working population, after retirement. In India, only the government employees, who constitute 3.36% of the total workforce of India. 100% people, 3.36% people. 2, the pensions paid in all those countries is fully funded. The employee and the employer, whoever is the employer, or the government if the government is the employer, are self-employed, then there is a calculation. But they put in money every month. There is a fund. From that fund you draw and give pension after retirement. There is no burden on the taxpayer in the future. In India, 0 is put into the fund. And after retirement, money is drawn from the treasury, from your future taxes. Third, in those countries, pension is subsistence. You have your savings, your properties, other incomes, but pension is to ensure that you are not in serious trouble. In our country, this pension for a small number of people, which is unfunded, drawn from the treasury later from your tax money, future tax money, has no limit, index linked. There are people who retire at 20,000 rupees a month salary and get a 60,000 rupees a month pension. I'm not begrudging them. But whose money is it? What about the rest of the people of India? Why is a teacher or a cab driver or your office worker in Badruka college any less than any government employee? Why should every single person not get the benefit? And why is it not funded? And how can you have index-linked pension when the government already pays wages which are double or triple the market value? For almost any work in the country, in government, you pay 2 to 3 times what you pay in private sector. You take any job, except the very high-end jobs. As a result, in the rest of the world, typically, for 100% of the workforce covered, 5% of GDP is what they pay annually in pensions and social security, as they call it. In India, for 3.3% of the workforce, we are spending almost 3% of the GDP. 100% of the people, 5%. 3.3% of the people, 3%. Funded, unfunded. Not ever growing, index linked, perpetually growing. These are not idle statements. A couple of numbers. In the last 9 years, in the Indian states, the government employees' pensions increased threefold. From 2012 to 2021, the increase is almost threefold. From 1,45,000 crores per annum pensions, they became now 4,06,000 crores. If you take a little longer period, from 2004 onwards, in just about 20 years, from 33,000 crores, these are the pensions for all the Indian states, 33,000 crores, it now became 4,06,000 crores. It's exponentially raised. Why am I talking to you about that? Because 20 years ago, a great man, an 80-year-old man, who had the wisdom and the vision, he would not live to see the benefits, but he understood the dangers, therefore he brought in what is called the national pension system. He did something similar to other countries. He said, look, we cannot give unfunded, index-linked pension drawing from the future of our children. Therefore, let us put money in now. The employer, the government, and the employee will put X amount of money. There will be a pension fund. From the pension fund in future, we will give pensions. And he also said, because the people who are already recruited into government so far, they were recruited on the assumption that they'll get pension in the old manner. That will continue. But all the new recruits, from now onwards, will change the rules and let the people know. That's the basis on which you're getting into government now. This happened in 2003, 2004. Vajpayee was the great man who did that. 18 years it's running well in every state and the union, except one state we did not embrace it, West Bengal. 18 years it's running well. Suddenly what's happening? State after state, they're saying, we'll go to OPS, we'll go to OPS, we'll go to OPS. Why? A small number of organized vocal sections of government employees, because they're organized, they're vocal and economically powerful, they have the power to bully the political parties and threaten them. Whereas the bulk of the people, including you all, your interests are completely at stake, but you are unaware. You don't think it's important. The fellow who thinks that what he was getting, he is not going to get in future, whether he deserves it or not, he knows exactly what he is losing. And he fights with his might. And the real people who are losing by perpetuating status quo, they vaguely understand. They think it is somebody's fight, the Prime Minister's fight, Chief Minister's fight, or JP's fight, or your Secretary's fight. This is a challenge of public management in any society, particularly in a country like India. A small group of vocal sections understand what is at stake. Even if society is benefiting, if they feel that they are not getting what they were getting earlier, they were used to it. that privilege. They will fight with all that they have. And the majority of people whose interest they try to protect, they have no voice, they vaguely understand what it is, they don't know, their support is lukewarm. The reason why I'm raising this, and I hope this will go viral in the country, is we need to focus on the future. Because your money, your country's future economic growth, your jobs, and the lives and livelihoods of the millions upon millions of the poor and middle classes of India are directly affected by this one single issue, which already has been solved. What is solved, we already have problems which are not solved, we have to solve them. But a problem that is solved by the foresight of a government, continued by the next government of Manmohan Singh, embraced by almost all states except one state, we are now going back. Instead of building further, building the country better, we are now going back. And I guarantee you, every state, and if the union is foolish enough to do that to the union, if they go back to OPS, the country is destroyed. Growth of India is finished. You as managers and workers have no future. I'm not given to idle statements. This is, to my mind, the single greatest threat to the future economic growth of India. As future managers, you are the custodians of growth of India, investment of India, creation of jobs, production of goods and services. If you don't care, I don't know who else will care. You may think it's extraneous. Please think about it. Google, search, verify. Don't take anything at face value just because I said so. If the numbers are wrong, if the logic is wrong, if what I say does not apply, ignore it. But if it does apply, it is true. It is going to be a problem for the future. Then for heaven's sake, stand up for yourselves. And for the millions upon millions of ordinary Indians who don't know what to just say. So, let me sum up. We have opportunities. We live in a fantastic age. But because we are stupid on occasion, as governing systems, as societies, and very short-sighted, we don't understand where the future is. We also have grave threats. These are universal. In France, the problem is much less serious, but because they anticipate a problem, because as I said, in those countries, the pension is fully funded. Right now, more money is coming in than is disbursed. But with the demographic change in Europe and other countries, because younger people are declining in number, older people are increasing in number, they anticipate that after some years, this fund will be depleted, therefore they will take money from the taxpayer. In order to prevent that, the French president, he is actually now, until yesterday he was trying, today he actually achieved it, because a few hours ago he signed it. He signed into law, increasing the retirement age from 62 years to 64. Most of Europe and America 65, some countries 66 and 67. France is the outlier. So France is trying to make France go to 64 so that there will be fewer people taking pension, more people contributing to it. Absolutely necessary. But even in a rich country like France, French people are very rowdyish like Indians. The kind of protests on the streets, even they are even burning, very much they have learned from Hyderabad, India, Telangana, Andhra. All our techniques they have learned. So there's arson, there is looting, there are protests, and people are saying no over our dead bodies. So it's difficult. And powerful Western to say. But difference is, in France, the whole people, they are going to sacrifice for their own future so that their children's future is protected. In effect, in France, the fight is generational. Those in 40s and 50s, they are not thinking of their children. They are simply being selfish. But the selfishness is in all families, the whole country. 100% people are getting it. Two, in France, it's a funded country. Therefore, the danger of the future is still a marginal danger. If 100 is put in, 110 is taken out, there's a problem. In India, zero funding. So there's going to be a problem. But if you don't raise your voice, politicians will give up. It's very easy because after all, short-term quest for votes, victory tomorrow. If somebody says, look, there's going to be a disaster 10 years later. Well, 10 years later, you will live or not, we do not know. Our electoral system, our politicians and our governance systems, they don't care for 10 years. Even 10 days is a little too long oftentimes. Just today, tomorrow, can I get into power? I can somehow become an MLA, MP, minister. What happens tomorrow? Forget it. We come to that stage. But because your future is at stake and the rest of India, fortunately 97% people have to pay. And if they wake up, at least some of them wake up, then the politicians will get some smile. Yes, if I worry about these 3% people voting, what about the 97% people? They have no woken up, they're no longer ignorant. They know what is at stake. If I want these votes, I will lose those votes. 97 versus 3. Then the weight is felt. That's the reason why I'm asking you. And one last word, slightly different but related. Even in the corporate sector, the short-termism is doing immense damage. Every day you see quarterly balance sheet. Yesterday or today, I think Infosys quarterly sheet. 4 days ago, I think TCS quarterly. Yeah, I understand that, but for heaven's sake, slightly have a long-term perspective. If you live and work for 3 months, and only 3 months, it is going to be a disaster one day, not too far. I'm not saying the world is operating on quarterly balance sheets to ignore that. When you keep an eye on that for day-to-day survival, please think of the long term, because we always underestimate our capacity to bring about change, big change in the long term. We overestimate our ability to do great things in the short term. And oftentimes there's a trade-off. If you work too much for the short term, the long term is going to be affected adversely. This is silly. We are not some insects that live for a day and die. We have people, we live for 80, 90 years. And after all, there is life. Next generation is there. So a bit of a long-term perspective is equally important. So not only politicians, even managers, we fall prey to the short-termism. A bit of a long-term perspective without losing sight of immediate needs is what we need. I said much more than what I wanted to because of my deep concern about what's happening to the country's economic future by a few short-term approaches. But please think about that. Once again, let me congratulate you on this wonderful day in your lives when you're all graduating. And I'm sure we will overcome the challenges of the country. And I'm sure wisdom will prevail. And I'm sure the growth that we're hoping will happen during your lifetimes will be sustained for 30, 40 years, just as China accomplished the miracle of growth over 30, 40 years. And India as a country will stand proud and tall. And we as a people will have wonderful, harmonious, free, and prosperous lives. I wish you all the very best.